their artwork. And some even go as far as asking me to look at their work, thinking I can read it like tarot cards. Well, firstly, I'm very far from being a certified art therapist. And secondly, as much as I wish they could, art therapists aren't psychics. Art therapy is about the process of making art, and especially if you aren't an artist, it's difficult to express exactly feeling so that other people understand. Only the person who creates the artwork truly knows what it means, and the art therapist is simply there to guide them. That brings me to another common misconception that you have to be an artist for art therapy to work. Couldn't be further from because anyone can use art therapy. It is actually better if you have no artistic ability because it allows you more time to break down your thoughts. If you're an artist, it takes significantly less time to express how you feel, and therefore it is more difficult to break past surface level feelings. On the other hand, it can also be overwhelming for an artist if they are constantly making art that reminds them of what they're struggling with. When you go to art therapy, you can spend an hour or two making art that expresses what you're struggling with, but you can then go home. Artists don't have that luxury. Another common misconception is that art therapy is only for children or the elderly. Art therapy can be used with a wide range of patients: inmates in prison, cancer patients, people recovering from brain injuries, dementia and Alzheimer's patients, and patients with speech impediments, and so many more. Lastly, and probably my favorite assumption, is that adult coloring books are art therapy. Although it may be satisfying to fill out mandala or paisley pages, it is not what art therapy is about. The point of art therapy is having a space of free expression, and being forced to color in the lines defeats the purpose of that. This brings me to the biggest thing that I took away from my research. Art therapy is about the process and not the product. So what did I do to gain all of my knowledge on art therapy other than research? I'll be explaining my experience as a teacher's assistant, a peer tutor, and an artist. Amy's Active Learning. I work as a teacher's assistant at Amy's Active Learning in Clinton, where I help organize and assist with art projects. At Amy's, we work with kids ranging from ages 0 to 8, providing them with a space to be creative while interacting with other kids. The way that classes are usually divided, there are 3 stations: movement, science, and art. Whenever I work there, I often run the art station. After working at Amy's for a while, I learned a few things. Firstly, you have to think outside the box and be creative. For example, whether it's birthday parties or camp, there is always a theme to the classes, and some kids just don't want to make the art project of that theme. We want the children to have fun and express themselves, so sometimes that means altering the projects a little bit to fit their interests. For example, we had a superhero party, and the example was to make the Hulk, but a little girl wanted to make Superwoman. So using the same materials and adding different colored paints, I helped her make Superwoman instead. This kind of ties into the next point, that you need to let kids have the freedom to create what they want. There's the other side of the spectrum where kids want to make their projects look exactly like the examples. I found that it's important to make clear to them that the examples are just a reference and it's okay if they're not identical. Just by looking at the kids' projects all lined up next to one another, each is so different and unique in their own way, which is the point of art. Amy was my capstone mentor, and this is a quote from her interview that most accurately reflects her philosophy and the philosophy of art therapy as a whole. I've always strongly encouraged children to be themselves, do themselves, and create themselves. And that is the process, not the product. That's everything. So here are some images of students hard at work creating, and here are some images of their artwork. You can see by looking at the alligator project, each of them are so different, reflecting the individuality of each student. Another huge aspect of my experience with art therapy is special arts. Special arts is a class offered at the high school where peer tutors work with special needs students. So what the class looked like. Every couple of weeks, the tutors rotated to work with a different student. So by the end of the year, we would have the experience of working with each person in the class. With each rotation, we would work on different projects. At the end of each class, we would have some downtime, and if the student did a good job participating that day, then they could choose what they wanted to use their free time for. Often we played with Play-Doh, draw, or build with Legos. On a conversation, well, I worked with another student who had difficulty speaking at all. Working with a wide array of students gave me a better understanding of what kind of people I could potentially be working with as an art therapist and how to adjust your approach depending on the person. This brings me to reflecting on my own artwork and how it both helped and harmed my mental health. When I first chose my concentration for AP drawing, I wanted to focus on insecurities and our perceptions of one another. As I spent more time on this project, I started to feel drained and was more conscious of my insecurities than I had ever been before. That's when I decided to switch my concentration to being mixed media portraits. After I made this change, I began to enjoy making art again, and I was in a better mental state. I think this is just an example of how art therapy isn't always the best way for artists to confront their issues. So here are some images of my artwork at the beginning of my concentration. To the left is a piece that I did with broken shards of a mirror, and the reflection in the mirror shows like distorted skin. And then I use stippling for the shading on the portrait, and that's supposed to represent what she actually looks like. And it's supposed to represent how our perceptions of ourselves are very different from what other people see us as. And the next piece that I did was a piece that represents how we mask our feelings. And it shows a girl who that's how she actually feels versus the mask that she puts up. These next two pieces are my more recent pieces, and they've kind of gone away from focusing on mental health and our perceptions of one another. The one on the left is called Bird Brain, and it's focused on how we mistreat Mother Earth. The birds are supposed to represent the annoyance of human nature. And then the other piece on the right is a piece that I focused on color and juxtaposing the different. So overall, my experience with art therapy, I worked as a teacher's assistant, a peer tutor, and an artist, and I learned a lot about how art therapy works. So now here is the fun part. Um, you can make a project at home. It is important whenever you create to take time and to get the most out of it, and feel free to put your own spin on things. Also, if you don't have all the materials, be creative and find alternate options. So the materials you'll need are a paper plate, paint, glue, cotton balls, and paintbrushes. Another alternate option for paint is markers. So I'm going to play a video that I made. I was planning on doing a part of my presentation that would be more interactive, where everyone could do an art project. But now that we can't see each other in person, I picked materials for. So we'll be making rainbows, and you can pick out whatever colors you want. I just picked the traditional colors. So first you need to cut a paper plate in half. You'll need some acrylic paints, some glue, and some cotton balls. So first you're going to go in with your first color and just go around the edges. And I'm doing this pretty quick just to show you how to do it, but you can also take your time and enjoy the process more. And if you do this with your kids, you can also add like stickers and stuff on it too. Just make sure that it dries first. Once you're done, it's also important when you're finished with the project to soak the paintbrush in water so it doesn't ruin it. And also, if you don't have paintbrushes at home, you can actually use like Q-tips, or like there's some other things that you can make like DIY paintbrushes at home. So here's the finished product. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
Nice job, Emma. I loved that.
Thank you.
I'm planning to do that activity. I wrote a few things down. I'm going to do that with my toddlers at home because that looks like a great way to kill some time.
Yeah.
And pretty easy. And I think I have all that stuff in my house.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening, you can use the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to put comments and ask questions for Emma, and I could read those aloud for you. So I guess I can start with my first question. So you had 3 kind of experiences. You had the teaching assistant in the special arts class.
Mm-hmm.
You had your experience with Amy's Active Learning, and then you had your own work. Which of those do you think kind of hit home most for you that you think you continue your work with?
I think working with young kids was really fun for me, just because they don't really follow the rules, so they're more like free-spirited, so they don't like they're not so concerned what other people think, so it's more interesting to work with them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I think the fear is kind of not there, but sometimes when you're older you overthink it, and you were young kids just get right into it and they don't overthink it. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And the video that you showed doing the rainbow with the paper plate, was that for Amy's Active Learning? Did you share that with those students?
We do similar projects to that. I just picked one that I found, and it's just like a simple project that it's very similar to what we would do in class. So.
Cool. That's awesome. I loved it.
Thank you.
So we'll just give it a couple minutes, see if anyone has any questions or comments. Again, feel free, those who are tuning in, to use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. So what are next steps for you now?
I'm planning on going to UConn next year and studying fine arts and minoring in psychology. And hopefully I can go to graduate school to study art therapy.
Okay, so you do have a plan to focus on art therapy.
Yeah,
Well, you're going to be great at it, and sounds like it was a wonderful experience for you. So I'm really happy to hear that.
thank you.
Awesome.